Hey guys, I want to welcome you back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. We have a jam-packed show for you guys today. We'll be getting into the Jalen Duren sign and trade news that just came out. I thought we were done with this, but here we go again. There's a team that he will be meeting with in free agency. We'll be going over that. And I have three sign and trade targets that could make sense for the Detroit Pistons. We also have a real Malik Beasley update. Shams Charania had something this morning, so we'll be going over that and what it means for the Detroit Pistons. We'll also be going over Kevin Huerter. He intends to resign with the Detroit Pistons. How much? We'll be going over that contract as well. Some team options with Tolu Smith and Danish Shankins, and a message from an NBA legend, Ben Wallace, of what he feels the Detroit Pistons need to continue to keep doing. But let's get into today's episode. We got to start with Jalen Duren again. I feel like we talked about him so much, and apparently we're just going to keep on doing it. So this comes from Chris Haynes. It just came out a couple of minutes ago. I wanted to jump on it for you guys, but it says breaking. Due to a sizable distance apart in negotiations, Detroit Pistons restricted free agent center Jalen Duren will meet with the Sacramento Kings at the start of free agency with the intentions of structuring a sign-in trade out of Detroit. Now, we had heard that Jalen Duren was very, I think the word that they used was overwhelmed, if I do remember correctly, from the Athletic of Sam Amick, of kind of like what the Detroit Pistons front office initially offered him for a contract extension. Now we're getting talk of Jalen Duren intends to meet with the Sacramento Kings for a possible sign and trade situation. Now, again, I think the Detroit Pistons are staying very firm on what figure they want to offer Jalen Duren. Now, we know what Jalen Duren wants. It was reported yesterday that he is looking for $40 million annually. So a 5-year, $200 million contract. Again, like it really depends how you value Jalen Duren. Do you think he's still going to develop being a 22-year-old center? Do you think he kind of is what he's going to be? Again, I'll leave that up to you guys, but it sounds like the Detroit Pistons aren't in love with paying Jalen Duren $40 million a year. And it's getting to a point where this sign and trade stuff is becoming more of a reality. And it kind of comes to a point also. It's like, I understand you're on a rookie scale contract. You want to get a payday. You want to get paid. But it kind of seems like, and this is just the optics I see it through, covering this with you guys, is he's more about getting paid versus wanting to play for a winning team. That's where he's at. And some players are like that. Some players just bag chase. And you know what? Get your bag while you can, because you're not going to be playing in the NBA forever. Some players are very lucky to see it past their first contract. Jalen Duren is looking to get paid, and he will play for any team that is looking to pay him. So it has kind of come down to sign and trade scenarios. Now, Sacramento is a team that is going through a rebuild, but they're a very old basketball team. They have vets like DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine. I have three players in particular that I think could be sign and trade scenarios. So we're going to be going over these three players. Now, the three players that I have are Keegan Murray, Domantas Sabonis, and Zach LaVine. I want to start with Keegan Murray first. Now, Keegan Murray was selected in the same draft class as JD in 2022. He did get an extension from the Sacramento Kings, I believe last season, if I do remember correctly. And everyone clowned the extension because they thought it was kind of an overpay for him. But he plays in between small forward and power forward. Past 2 seasons, he's been playing power forward. And we talk about the Pistons need a long-term power forward. He will be under contract until 2031-32 with an average salary of $28 million. 14-point per game power forward. The one thing with Keegan Murray that I think is a red flag to me is he shot 40% from 3 his rookie year, which is incredible to do as a rookie in the NBA. That should not go undersold. but his 3-point percentage has declined each in every year. He didn't even shoot 30% from three this season with the Kings. Now, can that be maybe Sacramento just being a bad basketball team? Sure. If you were to trade for him, does his percentages kind of go, closer to, 30, 35%, maybe even closer to 40%? Possibly playing with the playmaker like Cade Cunningham and Sar Thompson, and you have a Buka Corey now, and who knows what other moves the Detroit Pistons try to make during free agency or via trade. But maybe Keegan Murray, you can kind of buy into the 3-point shot long term, and you also had Fred Vincent could maybe tweak out some bad habits that maybe he has developed in Sacramento and trying to get him back up to that 40% 3-point forward that I think a lot of people nationally were really high on. Keegan Murray could be a long-term power forward if you're okay with the contract, because it does go up in the last few years of his deal, but the average salary kind of rounds out to around 28 million. He's one option. He's kind of on the younger side. Now, I just saw Sam Amick kind of report that the Pistons and Kings could talk about a Jalen Duren for Domantas Sabonis sign and trade. Now, the thing with Sabonis is he's a power forward as well, very talented power forward. Was injured this year, only suited up for 19 games with the Sacramento Kings, but for the most part, he's actually been pretty healthy. Good rebounder, great rebounder, I should say. Low post threat, really great passer out of the post as well. The only thing that kind of concerns me with Sabonis is I feel like he's a type of player where he needs high usage to be effective. And it kind of makes me wonder, are you okay with dumping the ball off to Sabonis and not having the ball in Cade Cunningham's hands? Like, that would be my question. Like, when Mike Brown was in Sacramento and Sacramento had a really good season, made the playoffs with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, and they had a really special connection. Like, do you want that same type of play style with a Cade Cunningham and Domantas Sabonis? I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure someone in the comment section will, bring up the weak defensive effort by Domantas Sabonis, which you're not wrong. Like, he's a one-sided player. But again, it really depends. He's on a $48 million cap hit going into this upcoming season in 2026-27. And the final year of his deal, I do have it pulled up in front of me right here. He's owed 48 million. So you'd have him for 2 years roughly. And it could possibly be a sign and trade for Jalen Duren for Domantas Sabonis. Me personally, there are some players on the Sacramento Kings roster that I would hope to, try to get in a sign and trade. Like, I really like Maxine Renault. As you guys know, like, that was my guy last draft. I like Dylan Caldwell as well, of this like a tough, gritty rebounder. He's a little bit undersized, but I mean, he's a player that I would definitely be intrigued with. But if it was like a Jalen Duren for Domantas Sabonis sign and trade, and no, draft capital involved whatsoever, I would be pretty underwhelmed. But again, like, I think the idea of Sabonis looks good on paper, but I think the actual, like, you put it out there on the court and you have to consume it as a Detroit Piston fan. I could see a lot of Pistons fans being very annoyed with the defensive effort, the rotations, not the strongest like help side defender either. So with him, it's just, I think the idea sounds better than him actually like being on your team, right? And the final one is Zach LaVine. We've talked about Zach LaVine on this podcast. It seems like for like what, 2 years, when he was in Chicago, kind of talked about like how he could be that bucket getter next to Cade. Now he's on the final year of a contract. He just opted into it today, $48 million. So he's an expiring. Could you see a sign and trade situation where you're signing Jalen Duren and you're trading for Zach LaVine for a 1-year rental? I think the plus side of that is it's a 1-year rental. There's no long-term money on it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. and you have a crap load of cap space to spend in the next upcoming free agency. My issue with Zach LaVine is the injury history with him. And again, it's a defensive effort. We know Zach LaVine can get you 30 on any given night. Like, no one's questioning what a bucket getter he is. But I think with certain players, you have to take them for what they are. And I think if you can kind of just know that Zach LaVine is going to give you no defensive effort whatsoever, you're okay with taxing Asar Thompson every night of not only playing weak side to protect the rim, but also covering Zach LaVine's misses on the perimeter. You would have to be okay with that. You would have to be okay with just overtaxing Asar Thompson and thinking it can he really cover two positions for us, because he's not a good defender. He's just not. He is what he is. Only averaged 19 points a game this year. He's been a 20-point per game scoring guard for the Kings and the Bulls, throughout his career. This was probably one of his, uh, I wouldn't say his worst season, but not one of his best as just points per game average. But again, it just really depends. Like, where are you at with the Pistons of getting Cade a secondary score? I think Zach LaVine checks the box of a secondary score, but it's a rental. It's a $48 million rental. But I mean, I think those are three players that I would look at with the Sacramento Kings. I know someone's going to say bring Darius Acuff home. I don't think the Sacramento Kings are going to trade their brand new franchise point guard and Darius Acuff. They're very happy that he did slip to them, and he's going to be a cornerstone piece for them. But you're looking at a lot of the veteran players. I mentioned DeMar DeRozan. I just don't like the fit with the DeMar DeRozan and a Cade Cunningham backcourt. I just think DeMar at this stage of his career is more of a player that isn't going to run up and down the court. He's methodical, plays out of the half court sets. Did develop more as a three-point shooter when he did play in San Antonio. A pretty good passer too in half-court sets, but I wouldn't really be in love with the Cade Cunningham, DeMar DeRozan backcourt. But you're probably looking at Sabonis, LaVine, and maybe Keegan Murray. I don't know if Sacramento would want to give up on Keegan Murray. That's just a name that I did want to throw out there. I'm sure you guys will be discussing it in the YouTube chat about the sign and trade situations. It'll be interesting to see if there are other teams that try to make a bid for Jalen Duren. I know the Lakers have been all over Jalen Duren for the past two seasons. I don't really know if they have anything of value that the Pistons would want. I feel like Sacramento has at least veteran players to a power forward that I mentioned that could be starting caliber power forwards on this basketball team. But they'd want to kind of discuss this again. Free agency starts tomorrow. Man, what a time to be a Piston fan. You lose Isaiah Stewart, and you might lose Jalen Duren in the same offseason after winning 60 games. So we did get an update with Malik Beasley, you guys. So Malik Beasley has been indicted. And this tweet comes from Shams Charania. It says 9-year NBA veteran Malik Beasley has been indicted on federal charges for gambling related to sports betting schemes such as point shaving and prop bets. His attorney, Steve Haney, tells ESPN the government is coordinating with a voluntary surrender of Beasley this week. I know Amari had also tweeted out that there was wire fraud and money laundering as well with Malik Beasley. I think a lot of Detroit Pistons fans over the past year, we were wondering what was going to happen. Obviously, he hasn't been found guilty yet, but when you're indicted, they found something. So I think he's done in the NBA. The Detroit Pistons did have his non-bird rights. They're probably going to relinquish those. If he was not found guilty, the Pistons would have been able to, pay him $7 million. That has gone completely out the window. It's sad, man. It is really sad that they did find something that was reported by not only Shams Charania, but Omari Sankofa as well with the reporting earlier today, but did want to kind of touch on it for a little bit with the Malik Beasley situation. What I will remember with the Malik Beasley time in the 1 year he was here is just the 3-point shooting and just what a marksman he was from three. I do know some Pistons fans thought that he was kind of point shaving when he was here. Obviously, this came from his Milwaukee Bucks days in 2024 when they found just crazy amounts of people betting on his rebounds. And I love how Twitter is because I think Twitter low key has some of the best investigation journalists out there that aren't really investigation like journalists. Um, they had found the I think game where Malik Beasley crashes the glass super hard, and there's 10 seconds left in the game, and Pablo Torre found the transcript from one of his YouTube videos about how they kind of found evidence of the people, placing like huge amounts of money for the rebounding prop bets and the rebounding overs for Malik Beasley. But I will remember him breaking the Pistons all-time season record, making over 300 threes in one season, the shimmy, all that good stuff. But we'll probably see Malik Beasley playing overseas for the rest of his career. Played in Puerto Rico this past season, probably be playing in Europe or Puerto Rico or whoever's going to pay him the most to play basketball for the rest of his career. But it is really sad that he was indicted. But did want to kind of talk about it with you guys today. So we did get our first free agency nuggets from the Detroit Pistons, and this comes from Shams Charania as well. And we do have some contract details with Kevin Huerter. So he does intend to sign a 3-year deal with the Detroit Pistons. It says free agent sharpshooter Kevin Huerter intends to sign a 3-year, $27 million deal to return to the Detroit Pistons, sources tell ESPN. The Pistons work through the deal with Mark Barlstein, which is his agent of Priority Sports. And Omari did have a little bit of a nugget with this 3-year deal. So the first 2 years are obviously guaranteed, but there is a team option in the third year. And, I see some Pistons fans like being really upset. Like I posted this on my Instagram. So many Pistons fans crashed out. So many Pistons fans crashed out. They're like, why are we giving Kevin Huerter $27 million? So $9 million a year. He was making double that when he had a contract with the Chicago Bulls. Obviously, you were not going to pay him what he was on previously. I think $9 million for a guy like Kevin Huerter is pretty good value, if you do ask me. I really liked the playmaking from Kevin Huerter. It was not expected. I didn't really know what to expect when we did trade for Kevin Huerter. The playmaking was a plus to me because I thought in certain pick and roll actions, he made really great reads. There were games where I felt like he could have had at least, 4+ assists in the game. His teammates just weren't capitalizing on the reads. Defensively, I like that he tries. I'm not saying he's locked down by any means, but I would say he's an average defender. I'm not going to say like he's locked down, but he's at least passable out there. He tries, like the effort is out there. That's all you could really ask for those type of archetypes of like, shooting guards that are more motion based. And I felt like he really started to find his confidence back in Detroit. There was a stretch there towards the end of the season where he was shooting 40% from three. And I think JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon really liked what they saw to Kevin Huerter, giving him a 3-year deal to come back to Detroit. And it seemed like he liked it here in Detroit as well. Now, what does that mean for Duncan Robinson? I think a lot of us has speculated after the Isaiah Joe trade where, he's on an $11 million cap hit. He'll be here for the next 2 seasons. You have Kevin Huerter here for the next 2 seasons. Duncan Robinson initially signed a 3-year deal with Detroit, but this upcoming season, his contract is only guaranteed for a $2 million cap hit. You can waive him and stretch him and create more cap space if you want to. If there are other players in free agency that you want to target, or maybe there's someone in the open market via trade where you want to upgrade the roster and generate a little bit more cap space so you can absorb salary, you can definitely do that. You also have trade exceptions at your disposal if you are the Detroit Pistons, mid-level exception as well. Don't have the biannual. We'll get into that in a little bit with Dana Shankins, but Kevin Huerter at $9 million, I think it's a very good value deal, and it's not a contract where it's not movable. I think $9 million is very doable. at the trade deadline, if, things just hit the fan and he's just not really producing and you want to get off the money, I think a lot of teams would be willing to take on a $9 million contract and that has a team option in the third year. But did want to discuss the Kevin Herter, um, I guess you would say just verbal agreement to a 3-year deal. So we do have some team options I want to get into. The first one is Tolu Smith. This one came really early in the afternoon, and it says the Detroit Pistons are picking up the option for Tolu Smith. Sources tell, I think that says Stocks. I don't even know. Smith is represented by Corey Mercum of Easy Sports Group. So Tolu Smith is coming back to the Detroit Pistons. Now, he was a two-way contract. Again, I did see that there are some deals that are non-guaranteed for him with his option. I think third center is probably like what you're looking at with him. I think he'll fall more into the Paul Reed role now with Isaiah Stewart gone and Paul Reed kind of slotting into the backup center on this team. Who knows who our starting center is going to be? Maybe Paul Reed is actually the starting center. I really don't know what's going to go on with Jalen Duren. I don't know what the Pistons are going to do. But Tolu Smith to me is just a G League story that they've developed, and JB Bickerstaff and Trajan Langdon like him enough to pick up his option and have him as like a cheap, viable backup, or at least they end of the bench guy that you can throw in if someone's injured or garbage time, whatever it may be. So did want to kind of just discuss the Tolu Smith option pickup by the Detroit Pistons that was a team option. And Danish Jenkins also was a team option as well. It says the Detroit Pistons have picked up their team option for Danish Jenkins. Sources tell Spot Track. Now, Danish Jenkins did have a biannual exception that the Pistons used to sign him. It was a 2-year deal, and they had the option to at least bring him back if they wanted to. And that's exactly what they did. They used the team option to bring back Danish Jenkins. And I think when you look at the team option, I believe it's like around $4 million. I think it makes a lot of sense for a guy that really stepped up when Cade was out. He was putting up 19 points a game, being that number one point guard, leading them to victories. Some of just the buzzer beaters, dogging Luka Doncic in the Lakers. That game to me just still lives in my head rent free. The Wizards game as well, when he hit that corner three to force overtime. He just had such a memorable season, and I really liked what I saw out of the playoffs with Danish Jenkins as well, especially when Duncan was hurt. He really stepped up, I believe, and even the Pistons coaching staff decided to start him next to Cade Cunningham. So really good feel-good story for Danish Jenkins. It'll be kind of interesting, though, to see what the roles are going into training camp with the draft selection of Abuka Akori and Danish Jenkins. I think both of those guys can actually play together off of your bench if need be, but love to see that Danish Jenkins is coming back to the Detroit Pistons. Final podcast of today's episode is Ben Wallace. Now, this was probably the most random video that I've ever seen. So I'm on YouTube this morning. I was checking something, and I see that TMZ spotted Ben Wallace at an airport, and they had about a 2-minute conversation with him. And I just pulled a quote from the video, and it says Ben Wallace on what the Pistons need to do this offseason. He says, quote, "I think right now the guys just got to refocus and get back to doing what they're doing and understand that it ain't so much what they need to do to retool. It's what the rest of the league needs to retool to adjust to them, because they were the number one seed, right? And you just don't get the number one seed by accident. To earn the number one seed, that means you were special all year. So they just got to continue to do what they've been doing and make everyone adjust to them," end quote, from Big Ben Wallace. Now, listen, I know this time of year, a lot of Pistons fans are like, trade. Let's make a big move. I get it. It's probably the most fun time of year for the casual basketball fan, Pistons fans. We've done so many podcasts of which players they could possibly be interested in. And I get it. People saw this quote and they immediately got pissed off. Like immediately got pissed off. Now, Ben is not going to say, yeah, like this team sucks. Like, let's go get Cade a number 2 option. Ben was just saying, the politically correct statement. I personally believe this team just is a piece or two away from really being, Eastern Conference threats. I think we saw it this year. The depth of this team was a strength, but I think in the playoffs, you need at least a number 2 option next to Cade Cunningham. We know Cade is the engine that makes everything go, and he makes everyone around him better. But I think for the Pistons to get out of the second round, make the Eastern Conference Finals, try to have an opportunity to make the finals, this team needs to try to find a secondary option next to Cade Cunningham. And I think a lot of Pistons fans talk about like Jalen Brown, which looks like he might go to Portland. They talk about these big names like Trey Murphy, who we talked about last week with the 3 firsts that New Orleans wants. I think the Pistons are doing their due diligence, seeing what everyone costs. It's not like they're sitting on their hands and just deciding, let's just go sign Isaiah Joe. I think they understand, or trade for Isaiah Joe, excuse me. I think they understand what they need to do, but a lot of these players that we talk about of trade targets, they're extremely expensive. And I think this organization is looking at the future of not hard capping themselves with draft picks, not hard capping themselves with the cap sheets, but also understand that they are looking to get better. They're just not sitting on their hands and trying to make these cost-effective moves. Like if there's a play for a Trey Murphy, or if there's a play for a Michael Porter Jr., or a play for a Lauri Markkanen, or a player of that caliber, they will pull the trigger 100%. They're probably the hardest critic on themselves in terms of trying to build this team for the long-term future. But a lot of these teams are just crazy with the asking prices. But I did want to talk about the Ben Wallace message for a little bit. Before we do wrap up this podcast, we have to hear from our sponsors over at the FanDuel Sportsbook. And we have NBA Central Division odds out right now, you guys. And they have the Detroit Pistons as the odds-on favorite to win their division at a minus 175. The Cleveland Cavaliers are right below them at a plus 230. Then you have the Indiana Pacers at a plus 480. And then the Milwaukee Bucks and the Chicago Bulls plus 20,000 for the rebuilding Bucks and a plus 25,000 for the rebuilding Bulls. But it's kind of surprised to see that the Detroit Pistons were actually the odds-on favorite this early on for an NBA future bet. Again, I told you guys last week when we were talking about MVP, like if you want to get like early access to these futures, I would do it right now. As soon as the line comes out for under over with win totals, I'm going to be all over that. But appreciate you guys listening to today's episode. Let me know what you guys are thinking about the Jalen Duren sign and trade meeting with the Sacramento Kings in free agency, the Malik Beasley news about him being indicted, the Kevin Huerter deal. Do you like the deal for the Pistons? $9 million for Kevin Huerter for the next 3 seasons with the team option in the 3rd year. The pickup team options of Danish Jenkins and Tolu Smith, and the message from Ben Wallace about the Detroit Pistons don't really need the retool. The league needs to adjust to them because they're coming. They're a veteran team, and they are here to stay and compete in the East. Talk to you guys in the next episode as free agency starts tomorrow at 6, not yesterday. Completely botched that. I apologize for that, but we'll talk to you guys really soon. Stay cool, stay safe, and as always, go Pistons. Peace.